From the heart of the tri-state area, this is News 2 Sunday Edition with Marcia Kramer.
Good morning and welcome to Sunday Edition. I'm Marcia Kramer. There aren't too many New Yorkers who would consider senatorial hopefuls New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani and First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton kindred spirits. But I found one. And if the mayor's recently diagnosed prostate cancer hasn't given him pause and a reason to reevaluate his appetite for a tough Senate campaign with the First Lady, well, maybe this will. Former Westchester Congressman Joseph DioGuardi sent letters last week to the chairman of the New York State Conservative, Right to Life, and Independence parties, indicating that he'll be seeking their endorsements in this November's race for the Senate. And since no Republican candidate has won any statewide race in over a quarter of a century without the Conservative Party line, that certainly could be a cause for concern. As the mayor spends time with his doctors and evaluates his physical health, and with this week's announcement by DioGuardi, he probably should take some time and reflect on his political health as well. With me this morning to help with his political diagnosis is former Westchester Congressman and current senatorial hopeful, Joseph DioGuardi. Joe, welcome to Sunday Edition.
Nice to be here.
I want to ask you this question. Are you absolutely 100% putting both feet, both hands, your whole body into this race?
You bet. On Sunday, when I gave that interview to the New York Times, I declared that I'm seeking the endorsements of the Conservative, Right to Life, and Independence parties. And that's what this process now is all about. They're going to have their conventions in early June. If I had waited any longer than that, the chances of me doing this, it would probably be impossible. Mike Long, a good friend, he didn't call me, I called him. But we've talked a lot about a lot of things in the last couple of months. Said, Joe, if you don't do this by May 1, you're not going to be able to do it. And I think you're a good candidate. You should really consider this. So I sat down with my wife, Shirley, and I said, are we ready to give up our summer? Are we ready to give up the rest of our lives for 6 months, day and night? We're both very active in public policy type things, human rights and whatnot. And we made this decision. So it's a go. The letters not only went to the chairman, but last night, I don't know whether you can see it in my eyes, but 3:30 in the morning, we finally stuffed the final bits of about 800 letters that are going to the committeemen of the Conservative, Right to Life, and Independence parties, because that's where the case has to be made. These parties are not run by party bosses. This is not Carmine DeSapio. This is a new age, and it's got to come from the bottom. So, and I believe I've got the support of at least the chairman of the Conservative and Right to Life parties. Independence party is a little bit confused right now. I hope to have that as well. Well,
let me ask you this. I mean, just having the support of the chairman isn't enough. Obviously, the entire delegate body of each of these parties has to vote for you at its party nominating convention. Do you think that you have the inside track to get the nomination from these parties?
Well, I saw the interviews given by Mike Long, and he seems to feel that I'm in the lead right now for the people that he knows about that are considering this, and that made me feel pretty good. The Conservatives know me very well. I won on the Conservative line in 1984, and that was the race that I announced against Richard Ottinger in a district that no one ever thought a Republican could win that district. And it was a very close race, and by the way, he retired in the middle of the race, so I had to fend off 7 Republicans, 3 Conservatives. I had my baptism by fire early. If that wasn't enough, guess who moved in to my district in 1985 to take me on? Bella Rabzug. And I gave it the courtesy of 11 debates. Most incumbents wouldn't do that. I hope they give me that courtesy, by the way, in this race. And so again, I won that race on the Conservative line. So I think the Conservatives know who Joe DioGuardi is, and I think they're going to be very happy. This just didn't come out at the last, or come up in the last week or two. It was in February of this year, the Conservative Party had their annual convention in Albany. And there was so much dissatisfaction with Rudy Giuliani as a candidate.
Why?
And my name came up. And I got that call the next day. Joe, your name is coming up. And that's when this began. Why?
Well, Rudy says he'd like to challenge you to a primary in the Conservative Party. How do you feel about that?
I'll make a deal. Let him tell Bill Powers to open up the Republican primary to a Republican. I believe I'm the true conservative Republican in this race. They gave John McCain that courtesy. Why wouldn't they extend it to me? If he did that, I would welcome him. I'd have to tell Mike Long that maybe the rules have to be adjusted a bit, but I have no problem with a conservative primary. The problem is that he is not a registered conservative, neither am I. That means that under New York laws, he needs the so-called Wilson Pakula. So he needs at least 51% of those 60-odd committee people, and he doesn't have more than, I think, 6 or a dozen. So there's a problem there. But to the extent that he wants to open up the Republican primary, I'll be his lobbyist to Mike Long to open up the conservative primary.
Well, let me ask you this. Some people are thinking that, you know, you're running as a spoiler to spoil the party for Rudy Giuliani. How do you feel about that?
Not at all. I mean, there's no question that I'll spoil the day for somebody in this race. But, you know, that's the old kind of thinking, Marcia, zero sum. I get in the race, I'm going to take votes away from Giuliani or take votes away from Hillary. Not in this race. Look at the polls. Recent Marist poll, about 2 weeks, says 51% of New Yorkers would prefer to have someone else in the race. A Siena
But
research,
are you that someone else? I mean, I know the polls. I read all the polls.
Okay.
Look, there are very strong feelings about both these candidates. A lot of people would like another choice, but are you the choice they would go to?
when they know who I am, when they know my background, how I committed myself to public service, and that's going to be my challenge now to get to the people of this state. John McCain did it with a bus, with town hall meetings. I've got that kind of energy. I expect to do that.
Are you going to get a bus and do town hall meetings?
Well, I don't know whether it's going to be a bus, but you can be sure that I'm going to find a way to get around this state to meet with the people, as many people as possible, because that's the name of the game. They have to know who I am, and you know, every journey begins with a step. I've taken the step. They will know who Joe DioGuardi is by the time the general election comes.
Well, see, the real question, I think, for you is this. I mean, here you are, you're starting out. They've been raising money for at least a year.
And they need it. They need more.
Why?
You know why?
Why?
Well, because they have to disguise who they are. I don't. Hillary Clinton has to help you forget that she's from Arkansas. She has to help you forget that she's a moving van away from the most scandal-scarred White House in the history of this country. Rudy Giuliani, he's trying to convince you he's a conservative Republican. But we know he voted against George Pataki. I mean, I don't believe he could endorse Mario Cuomo and vote for George Pataki. So I'm the only one in the race that supported the governor. And he didn't even show up at the 1996 Republican convention. That's for starters. You want to go to the issues? They are a carbon copy on the social agenda. They are two liberals at the other end of the spectrum for me. Even Democrats, well-known Democrats like Mayor Koch and Senator Moynihan, who's vacating the seat, said that partial birth abortions are infanticide. He supports that. She supports that. You know, Mike Long didn't tell Rudy Giuliani, I want you to be pro-life. He lowered the bar quite a bit. He said, all right, tell me that you are not going to take the liberal line. Tell me that you won't be for partial birth abortions, and we can talk and perhaps even support you. Doesn't get a call for a year. I jump into the race, all of a sudden he wants to talk to Mike Long. Is that the way to run a campaign?
Well, I guess we're going to have to answer that in the next block. It's time for a break. Stay with us, and I'll be right back with my guest, New York State senatorial hopeful Joseph DioGuardi. Well, welcome back to Sunday Edition. With me, former Westchester Congressman and current senatorial hopeful, Joseph DioGuardi. So, you kind of brushed off the money-raising thing. You said, well, they need the money to disguise themselves. But what about you? You need a few shekels if you're going to run for office. And the Mayor Giuliani, in fact, as we speak, is sending out a new mailing, 2 million pieces of literature, I should point out, to the very conservatives around the country and in New York who might normally contribute to your campaign. How are you going to come up with the money?
Well, I opened up my first account, or my account for this campaign this morning.
And how much was in it?
Well, you start off with zero. I wrote a check from my own checkbook, people for DioGuardi, $1,000, and I put it in.
So now it has
I'm off and running.
$1,000. Right, so you can buy a lot of balloons with $1,000.
Well, let me tell you, every race that I've been in, I've been competitive. In 1984, no one thought an accountant who never was involved in politics could raise $800,000. Bella Robzig never believed I would raise $1.2 million. She didn't raise that in 1986. Nita Lowey, $1.8 million. When I ran against her in that Democrat district in '92, it was about 800,000. So the point is, I will come up to that challenge. I'll have to get around to the people.
Don't you think that Republicans have committed money to Rudy Giuliani? You think that they're going to then turn around and also give money to you?
Well, look what John McCain did. People who never contributed before contributed. I've got to go to those people as well. But you have to understand, I've got a following. As the national or international spokesman for the Albanian people of Kosovo, the issue I brought to Congress in 1986. For 10 years since I left Congress, I've been their volunteer lobbyist. I started a civic league called the Albanian American Civic League, and I dare say that there are Albanians all over the country that can't wait to pay their respects.
That's true. That will be an untapped resource for you to raise money.
Yes,
absolutely true.
They're already calling me. They want to know, you know, I'm going out to Chicago on Sunday, and my first fundraiser from Albanians will be in Chicago. Tomorrow I leave for Atlanta.
You know, I bet you the mayor and the first lady are jealous that they didn't think to tap into that community before he decided to run.
Well, they may have a few supporters, but when they find out that I'm in the race, you know, I changed public policy for the Albanian people. If I had not done what I did, and I had to spend a lot of time to do it, Kosovo would be like Chechnya now. Nobody would know what it was. And that's why it's important that we have an advocate in many ways. Now, I'd be an advocate for New York if I was the U.S. Senator. The biggest challenge this state faces in the future is to get its fair share of respect from Washington. We're going to lose at least one more congressional seat, maybe two, on the apportionment. The power is going to Texas, Florida, and California. You need someone who's got experience. You know, being a first lady may be nice, being a mayor is great, but that says nothing about your ability to broker consensus, to pass important legislation. I have a record of 4 years working with people on the other side of the aisle. As a junior member of the minority party, don't forget, I was a Republican when the Democrats controlled. I worked with Barney Frank. I worked with Bruce Morrison on the Long Island Sound Caucus and Bob Torricelli on the Hudson River Caucus. Brought people together. Jerry Nadler and I just did something.
You are a Republican. You are not a registered conservative. So basically, your running could hurt the Republican in the race and hand it to the Democrat in the race. How would you feel if that was the end result?
I'm going to hurt both of the candidates in this race because neither one of them has defined who they really are. My being in this race will be, I think, the best contribution that could be made for the democratic process, because they will be then forced to declare what their stands are, define who they are, because I will be sure to raise every possible issue that can affect this state. And also, when you're talking about the Senate, you're talking about foreign policy, you're talking about national defense. There are a lot of issues.
But at the end of the day, if it turned out that you took enough votes from Rudy Giuliani so that he couldn't win and that she wins, would you feel bad?
I'm in it to win. I'm in it to win.
You think you can beat both of them?
Absolutely. I wouldn't be in this race if I didn't think I could win.
She's got 20 million, he's got 20 million, you got $1,000.
Going to have a lot more than that very shortly.
Of the Albanians around the country.
Well, not just with them. I've got 4,000 donors on my list. I just told you, I've been in politics for a while. I got to get that list now back on. I just got Campaign Manager 4 on a computer. We're going to send out that list. Many people will be very happy to get the letter personally that says
Joe DioGuardi. You sound like you're very organized. You've got, you know, you're getting all the campaign stuff. You've got programs.
Well, I stored away the equipment, and now it's back in an office in Ossining.
Didn't Rudy Giuliani help you raise money when you were running?
No, not that I know of.
I thought that he supported you and helped you when you were running for Congress back then.
Well, I hope he did, but I don't know that for a fact.
Because I was going to ask if you felt, you know, just a tad bad that you were going to, you know, spoil his party for him a little bit.
I don't think I'm going to spoil his party. In fact, if they looked at my entering this race as a positive thing, not just for America and New Yorkers, but for the party. Why? If we had a primary, if Rudy Giuliani thinks he can beat me in a conservative primary, he certainly must think he's going to beat me in a Republican primary. So what's to be afraid of? Allow me to come into the Republican primary. Let's have that debate on the issues. He will be a stronger candidate if he beats me in the election come September.
So you're laying down the gauntlet right here. You're saying to the mayor, okay, let's open up the Republican and Conservative Party primaries. Let's have two primaries, you and me toe-to-toe.
Why not? It's America. It's competition. It's ideas. Why not? Hey, when the post office saw Federal Express come into their business, what did they do? Full tent? No. They got express mail. They got better. Competition is good for the private sector, and it's certainly good for the public sector. In politics, one of the problems we have is we've got two parties that try to serve up pre-purchased, pre-packaged candidates And that's one of the problems with the system. That's why so many people are buying out of politics these days.
All right, so if you want to run in a primary against Rudy, conservative and
I'm not forcing a primary.
But let me ask you this, what about, you're also running, trying to get the independent party nomination.
Right.
So you want a primary in the independent party, and so you can run against Rudy,
I don't know
Hillary?
that there'll be a primary there.
No, but why don't you challenge them?
Well, I'm now making my case to the state committee.
I mean, you could talk to the Independence Party and say, why don't we have a primary in the Independence Party, and you can have Hillary, me, and Rudy.
It may come down to that. It literally may come down to that. It depends. You have to, there are rules that apply. I think you have to get 25% of the support of the people at the convention. I expect to do that. If they get 25%, then there is a primary.
So, I mean, talking about parties, how much does the mayor's support from the Liberal Party, or expected support from the Liberal Party, hurt him with Republican voters?
Well, I think it does. I think certainly Mike Long is offended that Rudy didn't come to him in a year, and the next thing he knows is he's taking the liberal line, but he still thinks he can take the conservative line. I think that says something about Mr. Giuliani. I don't think he sees politics as clearly as he should in New York State. Conservative Republicans usually win the day in this state, and I guess that's why he wants to get the line. But to be a conservative, or to get on that line, you have to have a position that is conservative both on fiscal issues and on social issues, and he doesn't.
Well, we have to take a break, but I want to continue talking with you about that. Stay with me. I'll be back in just 2 minutes, so stay right there.
From the heart of the tri-state area, this is News 2 Sunday Edition with Marcia Kramer.
Welcome back. With me, New York senatorial hopeful Joseph DioGuardi. So I want to pursue this. You said to me that you thought that Rudy Giuliani was not conservative. And you said specifically fiscally conservative. Yet a lot of people have the feeling or the impression that in fact he is a fiscal conservative because he's tried to cut taxes, especially the business taxes, hotel taxes, sales tax. He fought to get the sales tax on clothes removed. So how can he not be a fiscal conservative?
Well, on taxes, he's not running now for mayor. He's running for the Senate of New York State. And to press the issue on a commuter tax for the people who commute to New York, the many people from Nassau County, Suffolk County, Westchester County, hardly qualifies him as a conservative. You can be sure Joe DioGuardi would have never done that. When he started his mayoralty incumbency, he announced that he would reduce the huge bloated bureaucracy in New York City by at least 35,000 jobs. If you look at the official directory, the so-called Green Book, you'll see that it's increased dramatically since he's been there. So you can't just talk the talk.
Yeah, but couldn't that also be because of the fact that there's been a boom on Wall Street, more money's pouring into the city, to the city's coffers, and there's all kinds of new jobs that have been created?
Well, there are all kinds of ways to privatize things. If you really have the sense of the private sector that I have, having spent 22 years in the world's largest accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, before I ran for Congress in 1984. And by the way, was I surprised to find out I was the only practicing certified public accountant ever elected to Congress. A lot of attorneys down there. And by the way, these two are trial attorneys. So I think it's time to send an accountant back to Congress.
Okay, so if you're going to run, I know it's early, but do you have a platform?
Well, first of all, let me say this. I'm going to be the worst nightmare. In fact, I am their worst nightmare right now. I would love to debate right now. Here we have Vice President Gore saying to Senator McCain, I'll debate you twice a week. Well, I will stare into the camera right now and tell both Hillary Clinton and Rudy Giuliani, let's do it. Let's engage each other. Let the people know now where we stand. In fact, we should do the first one on your show, Marcia. How do you like that?
Well, the invitation's open, and I'd be happy to ask the other two people to appear. But, I mean, are there going to be issues that you're going to want to stress? That, I mean, she talks about health care, and,
yes.
What will your pet issues be?
Well, you got to look again at my record. The issues that I got involved in as a representative in Westchester are many of the same issues that affect us today. You're going to find it strange for a conservative to talk about the environment, but I'm the guy who started the Hudson River Caucus and the Long Island Sound Caucus, getting all Democrats and Republicans with districts around those two great body of waters to band together so we can focus our energies, get the money, and we did. The PCB problem is still not resolved in the Hudson, but we did a lot of good on the Long Island Sound, but there's still problems there. So I'm going to take a balanced view to the environment. Sure, we need development, but we've got to watch what we do because we're straining those bodies of water. New York State, we've got to figure out a way to get jobs to New York State. I'm very proud that after my '96 campaign, I met a Congressman, Jerry Nadler. In fact, he got involved with me on the human rights issues for the Albanian people. And I realized how smart this guy was when it came to port rail matters. And I didn't know that the Brooklyn side of the harbor is where you can dredge down to 60 feet without uncontaminated or without contaminated sand. On the other side, Port Elizabeth, where the deep water port is right now, you hit rock at 45. Now, why is that? Somebody made a bad decision, and somebody sold out New York. Now, was it Cuomo? Was it Beam? I don't know. The
So
point
what do you
is,
want to do, though?
we have to now make sure we get the money. That's why Jerry, myself, and Mike
Port
Long,
of Brooklyn?
Absolutely. We formed a task force called the Port Rail, the Task Force on Port Rail Industrial Development, and we're exploring how we can get the freight tunnel and the deep water port in Red Hook, Brooklyn. Why not? Guess what's happening? Because Jersey is being so insensitive to the compromises that have to be made because they want everything. That's why you have an impasse right now with the Port Authority. Halifax and Norfolk are getting the biggest ships in the world, which now need 50 feet to what they call draft. So what does that mean for New York? Our birthright is this port. That's where we started the growth of New York State with the Erie Canal. So Western New York will benefit from this. That's one thing. Also, what about Western New York? Why don't we have more high-tech jobs? Why is manufacturing going to Pennsylvania?
Well, why?
We've got to figure that out. Why? We're going to find out, right? We're not competitive. Too many taxes. Taxes have to be reduced. Now, obviously, you're not the governor when you're the senator, but you're going to work on things like this. But the senator can bring back the bacon. We give billions of dollars to Washington, and a lot of it sticks to the hands. It doesn't come back. We have to find a way to do that. As we lose our congressional delegation every 10 years, you're going to need a senator with a big mouth. That is Joe DioGuardi. I've demonstrated that in the past. I can work with Democrats, not just Democrats.
So
I work with liberal Democrats.
Is that going to be your campaign slogan? Joe DioGuardi, the senator with the big mouth?
Well, I don't know that that's the only way I want to be remembered, but I can tell you that I think Bella Abzug was surprised. She thought, well, I'm running against an accountant. This should be an easy race. And we had that first debate with Gabe Pressman, and she realized that I had an answer for almost every issue that was there. And that's that's the issue here with this race. Their worst fear has now come true, that there is someone who can articulate a position on every conceivable subject, and someone who's voted for 4 years on every issue that can affect this state.
But don't you hurt Rudy Giuliani a lot more than you hurt Hillary Clinton?
I don't think so, because
Why?
I'm going to go after Hillary Clinton. In fact, what makes Hillary Clinton qualified to be the senator from New York State? I mean, I'm not going to put you on the spot. Look at her background. The only time she tried to get something passed that had to do with Congress, health care, she turned off most of the people. She had to run back to the White House. She admits that. And now she tells us she's going to be a better broker. But has she demonstrated that? She's been a good first lady.
Well, she's gone to almost every county in the state.
Fine. I will go to every county, too. I think when people see Joe DioGuardi and hear his positions on the issues, like they did in my congressional district in 1984, who knew Joe DioGuardi in 1984 when I announced against Dick Ottinger? I kind of grow on people, but I got to get out there, and that's what I got to do.
Well, we only have about 45 seconds left. What about gun control?
Well, I've always said that we've got to enforce the laws on the books, and I don't want to see any further deterioration of our Second Amendment constitutional rights.
And what about abortion?
Well, the big issue in this race is going to be partial birth abortion, because both of those candidates, Hillary and Rudy, are for that, and it's infanticide.
Okay, well, I want to thank my guest, former Westchester Congressman and New York Senatorial Party candidate Joseph DioGuardi. I'm Marcia Kramer. Have a terrific Sunday.